Hello everyone, I hope you're having a good Thanksgiving weekend or just a good day in general, if you're not in the States. Now it's time to talk about One Piece chapter 964, and we open up with the Germ Pirates again in Dressrosa, and the cover page kind of gives us an explanation in terms of what happened to Queen, about why she was going around kissing people. It's because she's been infected with this kiss germ. I'm assuming it's a double fruit power, but it could also be similar to the virus that we saw back in Udon. You know, the virus where you get shot with the virus and you get contaminated and that spreads and stuff. I mean, because it does look like they're going around with pistols and stuff, contaminating people. So maybe this is similar to a Queen's invention. But anyway, speaking of Queen and Yonko commanders under Kaido, last week I kind of questioned whether or not the guy with spiky head was from a different race. And in this chapter, in this page, we get to see that he's producing either smoke or steam. And so the spiky head plus the added production of steam kind of got me to think that perhaps he could belong to the same race that King belongs to, because King has spikes on his head and he also has fire. He's able to produce fire on his back. I mean, the only thing missing would be that this guy doesn't seem to have wings like King does. But I just thought about that connection. The chapter starts with Oden telling the Scabbards and the Whitebeard pirates that he wants adventure in the Great White somewhere. But he gets denied passage aboard the Moby Dick by Whitebeard because Whitebeard has really bad memories about being in rocks. And he's like, yeah, I used to be in a group that was comprised about 6 of you and it didn't turn out well. So I can't have you on my ship. You gotta go by yourself. And then we get another one of those Luffy and Oden connections where Oden says that he has no navigational skills whatsoever, and every time that he's tried to set sail away from Wano, he ends up in Wano. And I guess that also could be a similarity with Zoro, but the reason for why it reminded me of Luffy more is because Luffy has been known to honestly say, I can't navigate. I have literally no idea where I'm going. Whereas Zoro kind of pretends that he knows where he's going. He pretends that he's all right, and that, yeah, I know my stuff, and then he ends up getting lost. And so after Whitebeard denies Oden, Kinemon comes up to Whitebeard to exchange one of those friendly fist bump handshakes. Kinemon's like, thank you for doing that, man. We need him here. We need him here. Thank you. So in my previous review, I talked about why Nekomamushi and Inuarashi think that there's only 5 islands in the entire world. It's because of the red poneglyph that is back in Zou. And so we have a brief conversation between them and Marco, and Marco's like, nope, the world is vast. And of course, this is an incentive for them to set sail as well, which we find out that, they eventually do. By sneaking aboard the Moby Dick, just like Oden tried to do in the middle of the night by pretending that he needed to take a leak. And so he attached a chain to one of the masts of the Moby Dick. And there's a conversation where Whitebeard says, if it were just about strength, I wouldn't have a problem. I'd be happy to have him join us. And so to me, that line is Whitebeard pretty much admitting at that point that Oden is at least, bare minimum, Yonko commander level. At least. And then later in the chapter, we get this great moment where Whitebeard, instead of calling him son when he admits him into his ship, he calls him brother, which, that kind of suggests that they're on the same level. So to me, it just kind of seems like everything is pointing towards the fact that Oden was Yonko level. I think it's a safe bet to say that he was Yonko level. Izo tags along and leaves Wano along with Oden, and they're both being pulled through the water. And I feel like this would be a scene where Kawamatsu would be incredibly useful. But he's not here. And there's a brief moment where Marco is untying the chain to the mast, and Whitebeard tells him to stop and just actually pull up Izo, but just Izo, not Oden. And so I think that's a hint from Oda telling us that at that point in time, Marco did not have his Phoenix Devil Fruit, because if he did, he would just say fly over there and get him, get Izo. And then Oden would try and grab Phoenix Marco and try and drown him. And that would be comedy gold. So everybody in Kuri is freaking out because Oden is gone. We see him bouncing past these cliffs. And Whitebeard comes up with the idea that in order for him to join or to be allowed to board the ship, he has to hold on to this chain for 3 days. 3 days. I like how Whitebeard knows exactly what the test of a true Chad should be. Dun, dun, dun. I wanna be the biggest Chad, like no Chad ever was. Boom, boom, boom. Crash into icebergs, piranha bites, sleeping while I go. 72 hours is my real test to not give up this chain. And as this is going on, we see that there's some animosity from Iza to Whitebeard, which is funny because it just reminds me so much of Ace, about how Ace really didn't like Whitebeard in the beginning, and then he ended up becoming his son. It's just like, I feel like Whitebeard is kind of used to this, attitude from his sons in the beginning. He's like, oh yeah, he hates me. He's in the I don't want to be your son stage, but he'll come around. Ace was actually going around the ship trying to kill Whitebeard, so I feel like he's just used to this phase. We cut away from Whitebeard to go to an island, and I have to say that scene with Toki reminded me so much of Usopp. I mean, I just feel like that scene was like full of Usopp vibes for me. For one, the island, the vegetation on that island, the flora reminds me a lot of like the island that Usopp was sent to in the Boyne Archipelago. By the way, those giant flowers, I think that's part of like Usopp's pop grain arsenal, right? That he could release one of these flowers that stink up the place. Not only that, but Oden literally shows up on this island looking like a version of Fat Usopp because of all the bruises. But then also one of the pirates mistakes Oden for an umibozu, which is a Japanese sea spirit that causes chaos at sea. And it does so by requesting an offering and then drowning the sailors after destroying their ship. But I think like this sense of false intimidation is also, very, very relevant to Usopp. That's something that he kind of does. It's part of his character. And so the fact that those pirates were actually trying to capture Toki got me to think about whether or not there's actually a bounty out for her head. And if so, what's the amount? But ultimately the reveal here is about her appearance. It's her full body character design, which I have to say is basically a clone of Hiyori Komurasaki, or rather Komurasaki is a clone of her mother. They look so similar.
And of course we see her wearing the crescent moon symbol, which again, there's something about the moon that is 100% tied to the Void Century / the Ancient Kingdom. Like I said before, it goes way back to the alliance between the Minks and the Kozuki clan. The Minks get a power-up under the full moon. Kozuki means ancient moon. Kozuki sympathizers have a crescent moon tattoo on their ankles. And here we have Lady Toki with the symbol. The moon is also where Enel ended up going and found those ruins that spoke about the Sky People and those little robots as well. So the moon is just way too repetitive as a symbol in this series for it not to mean anything major in the long run.
Also, if you search up Amatsugi on Google, which is Lady Toki's name, you'll find that Amatsugi means heaven moon. We then find out that Lady Toki wants to get to Wano, which actually ends up giving us the best Oden reaction face of this entire flashback. And then Whitebeard gets that same face too later on in the chapter. But that dynamic between Oden and Toki I thought is really cool, because one wants nothing more than just to leave Wano and the other one just wants to get to Wano. So it's kind of like Oda's writing that opposites attract sort of thing there. I also kind of like the poetic aspect of the fact that Toki was getting ready to time jump again, but she didn't. She stopped herself because Oden showed up. And then of course we know that essentially she stays in the present. Like she never time jumps again because she met Oden. And then Whitebeard catches up to the fact that Oden intentionally let go of the chain because he was trying to rescue Toki. And it's so weird because like Oda has often said that, I don't write romance. Like that's not what I'm doing here. That's not part of what I want, One Piece to have. And yet in this one introductory scene, you see that like clearly like he understands how to write romance perfectly. Now the guys that were actually trying to capture Toki were actually under the leadership of Captain Karma, which we've seen in Marineford, and he ends up joining Whitebeard eventually. Actually becomes an affiliated captain under Whitebeard. And I find it hilarious how he just gets knocked out. Like Whitebeard just shows up behind him and just pops him in the head, and that's it. Oden and Toki are taken in by Whitebeard, and we find out that the cat and the dog, Nekomamushi and Arashi, were able to sneak aboard the Moby Dick. I wonder what they were doing while Oden was like holding on for dear life. But and then you got this, really good speech or this dialogue of like Whitebeard saying, "We're going to reward you, brother, with the adventure of a lifetime." And then it just turns into like a montage of like the different islands and the different adventures that Oden had. We see Oden go to a winter island where he gets frozen. Then we see him go to a desert where he just bursts into flames. He goes to another place where there's some like giant koalas and piranha plants. There's a scene where they're looking at one of those ogres that belongs to the same race that Kaido belongs to. Kind of reminds me of like Little Oars Jr. I don't think it's him though, because like Little Oars has he doesn't have curly hair like the one in this chapter. So Oden is like a kid in the candy store at this point. He's just enjoying everything, and we get like this really cool Kanpai moment panel with like the crew enjoying themselves, which, I mean, all of this obviously is planting the seeds to Oden's future goal of wanting to open up the borders of Wano, right? So that it's not an isolated country, so that people can go back and forth and experience what he experienced and learn that, you know, just learn about different things. I like the quote where it says that he just felt like he was just so small in comparison to the rest of the world. Like you see how big the world is and you just feel so small. On a personal note, it just kind of reminded me of the first time I went to New York, where like you just get off the plane and then you start walking around and you see all these different types of people. It's just so diverse. And then you look up and you see like these huge skyscrapers and you feel like a dot. It just felt like all my problems didn't matter at that point because the world was much bigger than I had initially given it credit for. Now, out of all the places that they visit throughout the sequence, the one place that caught my attention the most was that building that looks like a castle.
So the only buildings that I've seen that have that same type of architecture as the one in that panel are from the Livneal Kingdom, which was the birthplace of Mont Blanc Noland, Noland the Liar, and it's also where he was executed. It's also the place where Cricket was from, which is a character that the Straw Hats meet in Jaya, and Livneal was also visited by Law and Corazon briefly as they were searching for a cure for Law's illness. Now you can clearly see that the building says Yari on the outside, and Yari is a type of Japanese sword spear. So I was wondering if this would be the place where Nekomamushi actually gets his Yari spear, since I noticed that he still doesn't have that weapon. Also, the way the building looks kind of reminds me of Gonfall and his spear. And so I just started thinking about his character and what his backstory could be. Because not only is he the only character in the series to mention that there's a second entrance to Skypiea, which, by the way, I happen to think that that entrance is all the way in Elbaf, which connects to Big Mom and the Giants. But also, and this is something we found out back in the Skypiea arc, Gonfall says that he actually met Roger and actually became friends with him over 20 years ago. Well, over 22 years ago now, since we're counting the time skip. So yeah, it just got me thinking about what he said and whether or not those lines of dialogue that he had in Skypiea will pay off soon, either in this flashback or in Elbaf. I mean, because there's literally a part of dialogue where he's talking about like people who feel like they don't belong. So it's kind of like, who does that remind me of?
We reach the ending of the chapter and you find out that Toki is 26 years old, but that she was born about 800 years ago. So, I mean, this is something that I think a lot of us predicted, that she would be connected to the Void Century because she's been, leaping into the future. And what's crazy, though, is that, think about this, like she's been leaping through time trying to get to Wano because she's never been to Wano. And we know how that story ends. We know how her life ends, where she makes that prophecy about the 9 samurai coming to Wano to defeat Kaido under a full moon. That's just like a reality check of how, like, we're getting close to the end game. Like, she's Void Century. She's making prophecies about Luffy coming in to defeat Kaido. So it just kind of puts everything into perspective about how, like, close we are to the end game. I feel like at one point in time during the ending of the Void Century, somebody must have taken Toki aside and told her, listen here, like, no matter what happens, you need to go and find Wano. You need to get to this place called Wano. It is super important that you get there. And so, in a way, I feel like Toki is kind of like this breathing, living poneglyph that holds all the answers. Regardless, we end the chapter aboard the Oro Jackson with Buggy, Shanks, and Gol D Roger himself. Actually, it's not Gol D Roger, it says Gold Roger, so the D hasn't been revealed yet, I guess. It's taking us back in time. I don't see an egg aboard the Oro Jackson, although maybe I'm just not looking hard enough, but I just don't see one. Roger and the boys are reading all about Oden and Whitebeard's adventure, and so this intrigues Roger into seeking out Oden, which I'm pretty sure we're going to get next chapter, Oden meeting Roger, at least, Roger coming into the flashback story and playing, obviously, a major role in it, which, I'm excited about.
We know from the last chapter that Whitebeard arrived in Wano 30 years ago, which would make Marco 15 years old at that time. And Whitey Bay said that Marco was only an apprentice or a deckhand back then, which is the same rank that Shanks and Buggy have here with Roger.
Now, the last time we got a box stating how long ago the flashback was happening, it was a box that said that this was happening 30 years ago. Now, I don't know how much time happens in between Oden leaving Wano and all of the sequence of his adventures with Whitebeard. But if that scene with Roger is still happening 30 years ago, then that means that both Buggy and Shanks are 9 years old reading that newspaper, because they are currently 39 in the story. So I wonder if they were orphans and growing up together, and then Roger just kind of picked them up. But anyway, this kind of explains why both of them were crying their eyes out during Roger's execution at Logtown. It's because for them, it must have been like losing a dad.
So moving forward, I definitely think that we're guaranteed to get a reminder of that emblematic scene between Roger and Whitebeard when they're talking and drinking sake, and where Roger reveals that he has the D initial in his name. That scene has to happen later, though, because it's at that time where Roger reveals to Whitebeard that he has a terminal illness. Plus, Whitebeard says that Blackbeard is already in his crew at this time. And some of you have already guessed that this conversation takes place in Wano because of the way that Oda drew the setting with the sakura leaves and all that. But in addition, I think that the conversation is actually taking place in Kuri, back when it was prosperous. In fact, I'd say it's actually taking place at the top of the Paradise Farm that Oden built, because there's a waterfall there as well. Plus the setting with Roger and Whitebeard has a rainbow in the back, which kind of fits the environment of the Paradise Farm.
Now, there's actually a character during the Kanpai moment aboard Whitebeard's ship that I wasn't able to identify. He's on the left. If you look at the left in between two boxes, I hope that's not Teach. I hope it's not Blackbeard, because I want his presence on that ship to be front and center. He's under the box that says, "Everything had surpassed my wildest fantasies." And you can see that he has a pretty thick beard. So that kind of gets me to think that maybe it isn't Blackbeard, because I don't remember him ever having that thick of a beard. But Oda could have sneaked him in, so you never know. Plus, I also haven't seen Thatch anywhere, so I really wonder where he's going to be coming into the story. Lastly, I wanted to do a comparison between young Ace and the Roger that we saw in this chapter. So I took a picture of young Ace and drew a mustache on him, and this is what I got. Look at that. Overall, I thought the chapter was great. I always knew that Wano was going to be important, but I never really registered how important it would be moving forward until I read this chapter with Oden and Toki. So, it just blows my mind how close we are to that end game. So thank you so much for watching. Like the video if you did. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Thank you for everything you do. Catch you guys later. Take care. Bye.